Okay. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Educators Ag Institute virtual. I'm Cassidy. I'll be your MC person for today. We're excited to share with you our second session of the day this afternoon, Embryology and Genetics with Eggs. So first, we want to go over some housekeeping. First, your audio and video is off, so we can't see or hear you. But there is a little chat box in the bottom of your screen. You can type anything you want, anything in there, but it is public. Everyone can see it, so please be respectful. There's also a link in that chat box right now. If you haven't completed the pre-test, we ask that you do that now. It really helps us see that the session is actually effective in helping you. Second, there's also a little Q&A button at the bottom. So throughout the presentation, if you have questions that you want to ask our presenter, you can type them in, and at various points in time, we will stop and ask questions. If you complete both the pre and post test for every session that you attend, for each session that you do that, you'll get entered into a drawing to win a gift card to the American Farm Bureau or the National Ag in the Classroom online store. There's some pretty cool resources that you can use for your classroom there. We would also like to thank our sponsors. You can see them on the screen. They're very helpful in making this work. So today we will be joined by Trish Zimmerman. She is from Schuylkill County, Pennsylvania. She formerly taught family and consumer sciences for 6 years, but now she teaches middle school science and STEM at D.H.H. Langle Middle School in Pottsville, Pennsylvania. In 2019, she was selected as the Pennsylvania Farm Bureau Ag Promotion Committee's Teacher of the Year. So if you would all like to welcome Trish, she will now present Embryology and Genetics with Eggs.
Hello, everyone. I'm looking here. Just want to get started here a little bit. I have it set up presentation in a PowerPoint style. And I have to share my screen. There we go. So a little bit about this. I teach middle school science, and it's something that my kids really liked, and I said, what can we do really fun? And they were like, can we hatch chicks? And I said, sure, why not? So who am I? As she had said, I'm from Schuylkill County. I was a member of the FFA, not something that I ever went real crazy with, but in the same sense, I always really liked it. I did get my Keystone. Those are my two characters right there. Grant is very much in love with these chicks, and I actually had to, I'm like, you need to leave. I said, because you can't be manhandling these chicks during the presentation. And so I have 10 years in teaching, a little bit more than that. When you count some odd things, you know how education goes. And I am a past participant of the Educators Ag Institute. Never got the chance to do it virtually. We were always there at Penn State in the summer, and it was always a good time, but always something new. So what I would like for you to get out of this session is to help bring more agriculture into your non-ag science classes. And anytime you're bringing new knowledge to students as it relates back to agriculture is always just a benefit. So I want to help teachers who do this activity find new ways to, change, add, adapt, and enhance what they're currently doing, Or if you've never done this before, how do you start your thought process and help with planning a successful embryology unit or lesson? You don't always have to do the whole unit. The great part about YouTube is you can find pictures, videos, everything of the sort of every stage if your current learning situation does not present for it. I don't know if there's anyone out there who does online teaching, but you could also have that from your own home or office wherever you work and kind of show it in. Definitely doesn't get that. Those kids just love touching those chicks. They just love all of it. As Cassie had said, if it's immediate, please ask it in the chat feature. I cannot see the chat feature when I'm sharing my screen like this. However, they are watching that and she will pop up and let me know. I will take questions at the end. I did see somebody put in the chat feature before I went to share a screen. Will you get this presentation? Yes, this presentation, all my worksheets that I have made, I will put out there. If I didn't make the worksheet, I link you to the worksheet so you can go print it on yourself so I don't have copyright infringement. So first thing you have to determine is where is your starting point? That's my son, and this was probably a few years back when we hatched chicks, but that's always his favorite part, is coming to my classroom to see them. Content area. There is something in embryology, chick hatching, that fits into all your content areas. Social studies, ELA, your math, your science, even your specials and your co-curriculars. As a former FCS, Family Consumer Science teacher, I definitely would do this, okay? I didn't do it, but now knowing what I know, and if I'd ever have to go back to FCS, I would definitely take it on again. The age and maturity of your audience. You can do this with preschool. You can do this with seniors in high school. It's just, what is your age? What's the maturity? And yes, those are two different areas. And what is your comfort level? I definitely do a lot more now than I did my first time. So I did quails at one point. Everything I show you is going to be with chickens. They're your most abundant. There's what you're going to have the most information on. And especially if you're new to it, go for chickens. Then I have some people, I know a girl in a neighboring school district. She starts her chickens and her ducks at the same time. Chickens hatch a week later, okay, ducks hatch, and therefore they get to see the process and they're able to compare. And that's something nice for life sciences, is that you can see, even though they're both birds, there are some similarities and differences among the hatching process. So I've done quail. So they're not very nice, I'll tell you that now. I would maybe tackle them again in a few years. They're really hard to candle. And if you don't know what candling is, that is taking a light, shining it underneath, and checking for the growth and development. By far one of the coolest things kids remember. They remember candling, they remember them actually hatching, and they remember holding that. Everything else in between, yeah, yes and no, but those are the standout moments. Those are the kids who have graduated high school. Do you remember when I had that chick? Hey, I have this picture. Do you remember me? And it's like, I let them take pictures in class with their chicks. And do you remember when I held that chick? Do you remember when we candled it and we saw it moving? Those are the things they remember. And taking all of that information and putting it into your embryology unit definitely can take hold in many different ways, leaving some kind of lasting experience for them. How do I get started? Alrighty. If you're a beginner, you've never done this before, I do suggest you reach out to the 4-H Penn State Extension Agency in your county or your area. I did see that there were some people from different states participating today. In Pennsylvania, I can tell you that the 4-H program, Penn State Extension Agency, offers an embryology unit. It's about $80-ish. And I say about because things change, and that was the last time I used it. It is geared towards an upper elementary level. I'd say ballpark 4th grade. They help guide you. They get you on your feet. You get your incubator. You get eggs. You get the little booklets for the students. You have someone to call when you don't know what's going on. Definitely a start. I did that my first year, and we quickly realized I teach middle school. I teach 7th grade life science. I teach 8th grade. basic cells and heredity and genetics. And then my 8th grade accelerates are like a pre-biology class. So everything I teach them in 8th grade pushes them into their honors bio for the next year. So I definitely teach at a higher level. So I worked with her and she got me on my feet. And then I said, okay, I'm going to kind of cut and paste a little bit, pull from here, pull from there. And that's kind of, dropped myself down into the experience category, adding and expanding to your content or your curriculum. If you've done this before, I hope I'm going to present something to you that you're going to say, hey, I really like that. Hey, I want to do that with my students. Or if you're like, I always wanted to do this, or I used to do this when I taught a younger grade, how can you push it up so you can take it to those higher level students as well? So how does embryology fit into the following topics? So I'm a lead teacher. So I talked to my other lead teachers in my building, my social studies teacher. I said, hey, if we had to do a group activity, across the curriculum, I said, how would you put embryology into social studies? And he goes, oh, that's easy. He's like, that's the first chapter of 7th grade. We talk about domestication of animals and importing and exporting of animals and goods and how animals got to travel. Chickens are not native to the United States. They are actually domesticated jungle fowl of China and different areas in Asia. So they were domesticated and then they also traveled among the world. He's like, I could easily throw a lesson in there. I was like, okay, good. My ELA teachers, they're always up for helping me. We do some argumentative debate topics. We do a lot of descriptive writing and persuasive writing. And those are projects I will present to you with that. And then also the big component of research skills. If you have a library rotation for your students, definitely can pull in the research. I know some schools even have a research class. I had one when I was in school a long time ago. Math, data collection and graphing, basic percentages. So that takes there. And then here's my home is adaptations, body systems, genetics, genetic defects, life cycles. I could go on and on and on of everything of how this relates to science. That's a no-brainer. Here are those specials. So I did say to our music department, I said, she goes, well, if I was teaching at an elementary level, she goes, you could easily do songs of different birds. You could talk about the pitches of the different birds, identifying which song is coming from which bird. You could take that. It's not just chickens. It's like the aves species as a whole. She goes, but that's something easily could take into there and work that. Art, my kids do the research and persuasive posters, and I have some coming up here in a few slides. Easily Art was more than happy to always lend me a hand and put that in as one of their projects. Physical education, they said, well, if I was teaching it at the elementary level, that, games of how chickens move and turn their eggs without the use of hands. He goes, well, I would probably easily find some kind of game where you're not allowed to use your hands. And, it's not like soccer where you're just going to kick a ball and go, but how they could move something across an area without using hands, he goes, and then help you tie that back into your content. So if your school is willing to take this on as a whole big area, or maybe you co-teach with someone and you are responsible, schools are constantly cutting all your specials, all your co-curriculars. How can, we do this? Okay, you're responsible for art. You have something for art. You're responsible for a constructive physical activity. You're responsible for a music lesson, library. I know where my son goes, his teacher actually does their library class where they go to the library. They no longer have a librarian. So lots of different ways you can pull that in if you're working in those self-contained classes. Family consumer science, my other home, easily egg recipes, talk about how an egg is fully sustaining for that chick the entire time that they're alive. That nothing else needs to go in or out. They have everything they need in there in comparison to a mammal where it depends on the mother to be eating. You can talk about nutritional values, label reading. I often teach label reading with that as well. In the world of family and consumer science, it's no longer home economics. You do have that child development component, and you could easily do a compare and contrast between a child's development versus a chick's development and take it from there. That is also one of those ways that you could pull it into a higher grade level or higher classes, so to say, because family and consumer science typically isn't offered at the elementary levels. You're the smaller once you hit middle school and high school, if the school district still has it. So my other last area that I teach is STEM. Some schools call it STEAM. They add in that A for arts. We talked last year about at the Ag Educators Institute, some schools put the A for agriculture. But I always do the egg drop challenge with them, and the kids are always like, how am I gonna drop an egg? They're like, is it a baby? And I'm like, no, they're ones from the grocery store. But I have them design something that's gonna protect their egg. One of the cool things that we always talk about is, why doesn't the egg break when the mother sits on it? Well, because it's the distribution of weight. But I give them this scenario that a chicken has laid their eggs somewhere and they need to deliver it safely to the incubator, create a package that will help their eggs if they drop, roll, or tumble. We talk about impact, we talk about suspension, we talk about shock absorption. So that's definitely an up and coming area. I know some elementary self-contained classes, up until, some are self-contained until 6th grade, maybe even higher. How do you pull those STEM activities in? Here's definitely an activity to talk about and encourage that higher level thinking. So activating strategies, really all you have to do is put the incubator in your classroom and kids are gonna go crazy. They're gonna say, what is that? What's in there? What are we doing? And you'll have 1,000,010 questions. Depending on the age, there are some more elementary style books. Hurry, Hurry. My son has that book and he always really liked it. And I said, is it a fast process? And he's like, no, because now this summer when I hatched, we had the incubator here at home. And he was like, did they hatch it? Did they hatch it? Did they hatch it? And constantly. So it's definitely not a hurry, hurry story, but it's a very nice one that talks to it on a lower level. Nature's Perfect Package. This is a little bit higher level. Let's Hatch Chicks kind of takes all the different components of the lifestyle and keeps going with it and helps them teach it to them at a younger level. I do have a link here, and yes, this PowerPoint comes to you, that you can click on there, and there's tons and tons. All you have to do is get on Amazon and say books, elementary books about hatching, kids books about hatching chicks. And there are plenty of resources, definitely pulling in your literacy components. I give my middle school kids this infographic, and I can't give this to you because I'm not quite sure where I ever got it from. But it just talks about what is an egg, how the chicken collects them, they hatch, their development, the maturing of females and males, and then the life cycle continues on. There are plenty of infographics out there like that as well. This is a video I always show, so I would like to show it to you. It is realistic looking, however, it is animated. There is some sound to it, but it's nothing, it's just instrumental music. Oh, I'm sorry. So that is a video I really like. It's realistic, but it's animated because there are some kids who might be a little bit squeamish with some things. So that is one. And I also like they show the size comparison. I do stop at certain points and we do discuss that. But that's just how I do it. And every teacher has their own style. I also like this infographic as well. How does the egg get made? Because I think that is the wildest thing in the world. When I first saw the whole reproductive tract and I'm like, all those little yolks up there, I was blown away by it. So I know that's definitely something that they would like as well. However, when you have it drawn out versus real, it's a little bit easier for a lot of students to handle. Some big questions you're going to be asked. What's the difference between fertile and unfertile? Can I hatch chickens out the grocery store? Typically, no. There's always some wild things. You know, what if I get a blood spot in my egg? That's probably not a chick developing. Not every egg can be hatched. You have things that the egg wasn't fertile to begin with. I always explain to my students, when you have a hen house and they are all layers, there's no rooster there, okay? There's nothing but females. Life cycle cannot go on. There's no sperm present. They can just lay eggs, lay eggs, lay eggs. My higher level kids, my pre-bio kids, we do talk about reproduction, you know, just every time an animal, quote unquote, comes into heat, does not mean it's always going to produce a baby unless the male's present. And then it kind of clicks for some of them. Definitely when you're comfortable level with it. Some people do the see no evil, I know no evil. And then I get into it because that's my style. And I'm like, you guys are in science class. It's life. This is life science. This is biology. This is genetics. And I kind of take the bull by the horns. Internal versus external fertilization. It's quite interesting that the things kids will ask you. So when in my 7th grade life science class, we talk about different reproductive systems and, you know, what is internal fertilization, typically what you see with your mammals. And then external fertilization, that's like when fish lay eggs and the male goes over top and sprays them. So the way birds mate, they're just on top of each other. There is no true penetration going in. So kind of when I explain that to my upper level kids, some of them kind of question it, and that's just how detailed you want to get. What class are you teaching? Okay. Are you going to move on? It definitely a science topic, maybe not so much an ELA topic, or if you're covering it in that content area. The parts of the egg. This is one of my favorite activities I do. I get eggs and I make sure that they come in a grocery store styrofoam container, because otherwise the kids are always kind of freaking out. A lot of times though, I'll also do the white eggs when I normally am given brown eggs or light brown eggs to put in the incubator, depending on what farm I get them from. So right here, you're gonna see your shell. Okay, we're all common with the shell. Here, this little thin part is actually the membrane. If you crack an egg open, okay, I'm sure you've always noticed there's kind of a little air pocket there. That's because there are 2 membranes there, an inner and an outer membrane, and that air pocket between them is the air cell. That's something that we monitor the growth of during that. There we go. Then when you're looking at the inside, the yolk is not the baby chick. Instead, the yolk is the nutrients for the baby chick, going back into your nutrition facts if you're going to teach on that. This little white circle right here, and maybe you have to look really close on your computer screen, is your germinal disc, your blastodisc. That is what now becomes your baby chick. This is your albumin. All right, and there is actually 2 different parts of albumin. There's the thick and there is the thin. We talk about that it's so watery, and when we put the eggs in the incubator, we have to keep humidity up so they don't dry out. The shell is porous, and if you kind of want to take it in a science standpoint, STEM, you can put these underneath your microscopes and you can look at things at a different level. I typically don't, because this takes me about one whole class period to get through all the different parts and doing that. On the chalaze, I always tell them it's kind of like a bungee cord that kind of hangs it. So if I pick up the egg and I'm turning it all around to candle it, the little embryo isn't smacking off the sides of the shell. And then it kind of, the kids are like, okay, it's like a bungee cord. I'm like, yeah, it keeps it kind of as close to the center as it can stay. But yeah, so the shell is porous. So airflow does go back and forth between it. Moisture does go back and forth between it. And you'll see, as I have some candling pictures, sometimes if those holes in your shell are too big, it can have some problems. Okay, it's gonna let too much through. The holes are gonna be too big, allowing for bacteria to enter, which would then kill your embryo if it was developing. And that happens sometimes with really young hens or really old hens, where either their body's just figuring out how to make eggs, or their body is really old and saying, I'm done with this. So you kind of get it in the middle there. And that's why layers typically are only around for a few years, because of how that works for them. So I always, like I said, I take these eggs, we crack them, I give each one, I put it on a plate or a bowl, we put them at my stations, and then we look for all the different parts, pick them out, talk about what the purpose is and what the function is for each one of them, why it's there, what it does, any special features. And like I said, that could easily take me a good half an hour, which in my case is almost an entire class period. And those are just the basics. There is a yolk membrane. There's different things that go to it as well. I don't get too crazy into it. If you're teaching at a higher level, yeah, definitely, you can take it to that. Your younger kids, you could just pick out the basics. You could probably narrow this down to about 5 different parts and go for it. It's all on what your age is, what your children's maturity level is, and how comfortable you feel. And like I said, if you do this more than once, you're going to add and get more comfortable as you go. So these worksheets show the parts of the egg and the embryo. So on the day that we go around and crack the egg open, my students fill in this worksheet, a freshly laid egg, quote unquote, day 0. Then day 3, we talk about that big hunking eye. So that video that you saw, like the eye's huge. So we always say, okay, that picks out there. We talk about this is the brain, and therefore there's different lobes in our brain, and therefore that is, I say, why are there 3? They don't have 3 brains. And then suddenly someone comes up, well, don't we have lobes? Don't we have hemispheres? And we talk about it in that. Their backbone, okay, they can handle that. The little lumps kind of sometimes throw them away. And I'm like, okay, if this is my pelvis, okay, what would the lump be coming out the side here? Alrighty, about midway up my body, what would the lump be coming out? And then they say, okay, that's my arm, that's my leg. I say, halfway, between your arms and your head, okay, that's my heart. Those are my internal organs. And they pick those out pretty easy. Day 10 gets a little bit more complicated. This is where you talk about your shell, your internal, your external membranes, your allantois sac, the yolk, all the different parts of the chick. These are free. They come from this worksheet, this website here, and they do have modified versions, ones that may only have 5 blanks versus the 10 blanks. So you can kind of take that, you can make it your own. You can say, okay, well, I want the harder one, but just give them some. You can differentiate, that's all you. So this worksheet is provided for you as well. I made this one. It's just making a hypothesis. I do use this as part of my scientific inquiry unit and continuation on how many eggs did we start with. So this hatch that I did for this presentation, I started with 18 eggs. There were no cracked or damaged eggs. Number of eggs we predict will hatch. Well, I'd love to say 18 out of 18, but most people are realists and say, okay, you know, maybe 15 sounds good. And you figure out your hatch rate percentage, your basic math skills. What color do you think they will be? The official due date. My official due date was yesterday, July 8th. I typically, you can hear them peeping because that internal pip that happens allows them to breathe the external air more freely, and therefore they chirp. The first pip or crack, sometimes it's not a nice little dent. Sometimes it does make a hairline crack. What time do you think the first chick will fully appear? When do you think the last one will arrive? And I kind of let them make any other predictions there. I do give them some guidelines. I say, oh, okay, within 24 hours, there will be start to finish. I tell them that you can hear them before you can see them. I do cover that. So my official due date, based on the exact time I put them in, would have been 6 o'clock last night. So 6 o'clock, July 8th. I had one at 1 in the morning on July 8th, and I have 3 in right now that still are wiggling around but haven't come out yet. So I'll give them probably till at least tomorrow morning before I would make any definite decision about them. I always tell my kids, the larger the animal, the bigger and wider the gestation time can be. So these chicks are at 21 days. One could hatch on 20, one could hatch on 22. That's fine. I always say, okay, mammals, okay, humans, we have 40 weeks, 9 months. You know, so I said, how many of you were born early? And you have a few kids, hey, I came 2 weeks early, you know, I came 4 weeks early and I had to spend time in the NICU. They know this, you know, or no, my mom said I was 2 weeks late and she was hot and miserable because it was the middle of July. They know this. Okay. I said, so 2 weeks early or 2 weeks late for a human, I said, you still turned out fine. I said, 2 weeks early, I said, look at the development of the chick. 2 weeks late, look at what, you know, what would be the problems. It would be too big for that egg. So they do understand the larger the organism, the larger typically the gestation time, more wiggle room, smaller the animal, smaller the gestation time, less time for wiggle room in the due date. Daily activities. So we always do the temperature. Sometimes we do Fahrenheit, sometimes we do Celsius. Depends what incubator I use. Sometimes we put both in there. I can make them convert if that's something that you're teaching. Humidity percentage. We talk about the humidity in the air during summertime. Right now it's hot and sticky out because there's a lot of moisture in the air versus in the wintertime, not so much. We sometimes have this as like a bell ringer activity. Sometimes I have some students during my homeroom that need something to do, and I make that their job, and I just have one big, I print it on our poster paper at school, I put it up on my board, and then everybody gets the same time. So at 8 a.m., it was the measurement every day. You can do basic graphs. You can do if you're talking elementary and introduction to graphing, you could make one big one for your class, or I make my students actually graph their own. And definitely my higher level kids, we do the color coding. So this is my temperature one. We do up to 98.5 is a danger zone, because if it gets below that, it's getting a little chilly in there. Yellow meaning warning, green meaning good, and then so on above it if it gets too hot. Then the humidity one, once again, is the danger. How low is too low for the humidity for them? I have a danger area and what's good. Then over here, it changes. All right, on the far side there, day 18, that's what we call lockdown. That's when I take them out of their automatic egg turner, and you have to turn up the humidity because they're getting ready to hatch. They need that extra moisture so they can spin in their egg without getting stuck. And so therefore, obviously then our acceptable areas is changed. We talk about, okay, it goes down, down, down. Why does it spike back up? Down, down, down. Why does it spike back up? And then we always talk about, well, that's when Mrs. Zimmerman added water into the incubator. It spiked back up and it was good for a few days, got to a warning level, put more, it spiked back up, okay? And it really spiked up there because then Mrs. Zimmerman filled all the water trays in our incubator. So those are some different things to do. And, maybe you have a gifted student, you need to challenge them, okay? These are activities you could easily pull in for a challenge. There are things you can do as a class. There are things you can do individually. My students do them individually. My accelerated kids are responsible for the extra coloring. So daily growth logs is something else that we do every day. Not only do we track temperature and humidity, but then I also have this beautiful little Easter basket. I have plastic Easter eggs with each number on them. You can buy this. This was actually something I found, the chick life cycle eggs. When I was at Ag Institute, when the 4-H kids come and present, they had the 4-H kids in the AVs club, they had this laid out, and I was like, I really like this. So, and their pictures that go with it. I've taken chick embryo sheets like this, and I cut them up and I put them in there. And so you can do it 2 different ways, and I've done it multiple. I mean, you can do it in crazy ways for all I care, but the ways I've always done it, I use it as a Monday morning. Okay, this week we're doing days 1 through 7, 8 through 14, 15 through 21, and we do that as a Monday and kind of just take a Monday and kind of chunk out what's going to happen that week. We've done it as it's a daily. So my homeroom kids who need something to do, they do temperature, humidity, they take one of these eggs, they write it up on the board, what's happening. Every time my kids come in, they sit down, they take the temperature, they do the humidity, they write this down kind of as their bell ringer activity. However, sometimes snow days get in the way and I kind of just want to knock it all out at once. I start it, I say, okay, I put them all around my classroom like a big Easter egg hunt. And I say, go around, find all your days, write all the stuff down, and then we go through it. Or each day I have them write it and I'll be like, okay, you know, today's day 10, what's going to be happening? If I were to look inside this egg right now, what are we going to be seeing going on? Plenty of different ways. I use my Easter egg basket with the days inside. Sometimes I cut pictures. Sometimes I have all of these little slips cut out as well, and they're in there. It just varies. They get worn, they get used, they get lost, and you have to replace them once in a while. My daily log looks like this. Day 1, what's going on inside. Day 2, what's going on inside. And these are the things that they would write underneath there. Candling. This is my favorite, their favorite, everyone's favorite. I have teachers come to my room. Okay, can I see that? The kids told me you were candling eggs today. So that's, like I said, you hold it underneath the light to check for, determine fertility and track the growth. I always take a light pencil and I write on each egg what number they are so I can kind of track. If I'm like unsure of an egg and I want to go back and check it, I need to make sure I'm checking the right one. The same way a farmer would tag cows so he knows which one's which. They might know them apart, but you would definitely want to be sure. So I do it about 3 times. Day 3 or 4 determines fertility. Day 12 is a good progress check. Day 18, I remove any non-viable before the eggs go in lockdown, meaning I take the turner out, jack up the humidity, and don't touch them until they hatch. Shell development concerns happens here as well. Oops, there we go. So what that goes with is this egg right here. I can actually see a big air pocket here. This is actually the air cell. When I cracked this egg open, and you can see it's lumpy here, lots of holes, there was actually no yolk even in that egg. So that I would assume came from a really young hen or a really old one whose body just was not working properly. And that's nothing too crazy to happen. This right here is what a normal egg would look like. If you go get an egg out of your fridge right now, this is what it's probably going to look like. You're going to see your air cell. Okay? You may see some flaws in the actual shell. This darker area right here is the yolk. That would be a normal egg. If I were to candle them the day I get them from the farm, this is what I would expect to see. This one down here, okay, there's a really dark area right here. I see veins, great development, but I also did make note, it has this little crack here. it had a really weird lump at the top here, and I could see lots of pores in it. So I did write down when I was tracking them that yes, it was viable. Yes, it was growing. It was staying on track. However, there were some shell issues. So that could be a problem when it comes to bacteria getting into that egg, maybe possibly overtaking the embryo at some point. So candle tracking allows you, I always say about having them with your pencil, allows you to track development. It's helpful if you're unsure about an egg. Untrained eyes may not see something an expert would. I always say I'm safe than sorry. Sometimes I'll look at an egg and I'll be like, I don't know. And I'll kind of put a question mark next to it on my paper as I go through them. I have my co-teachers at this point are all now egg experts as well. So what I do is I write stuff like at egg 13, porous, no development. I'm going to leave that in there for a little bit yet because I'm not sure about it. And thankfully I do, because the next time I candled, there was an air cell, there were veins, I saw it moving around, but still had that very porous shell. Air cell only the first time I candle it. However, I do see development happening. Egg 15, that was that 100% clear one. There was no development. I took it out of the incubator because it was unfertilized. And then actually I should even have there no yolk next to it. 16, there was an air cell. There was a dark spot. I really didn't see any veins, but it was a very dark egg. Eggs come in all colors. White ones are your easiest to candle, however, typically not found for laying chickens, for producing chicks with them. They're not ever really fertile. Find some light brown ones, find some light blue ones. Dark brown ones, I have nothing against them, but it's going to be very hard to candle, very hard to show development. I did do quail at some point. I really liked quail. They came out so little, the kids were blown away, but quail eggs were horrible to candle. And I think that's taking away from the learning experience of doing this embryology unit, seeing how they're growing throughout. So try as you may, take whatever you want. I just don't feel comfortable doing very dark eggs because it takes away from that whole experience for them, as well as I'm not an expert. I don't have crazy equipment to do it. I do it with a flashlight, one of my little Harbor Freight Bass Pro mini flashlights with LED bulbs is the best thing I've ever had to candle eggs. It's just what I like. So here's candling. This is a viable egg on day 4. Okay, you can see the dark spot, you can see the veins. That was also the one that had that little star crack to it. This one here was day 10. I told you I typically candle about 3 times. You're gonna watch right about here. Let me see if I can draw. Right here, you're gonna see that really dark line. That is actually the chick's spine. It's really dark up at this end because that is actually where the head, the brain, the eyeball is. Oops. And you're going to have students ask you, does that hurt them? Are they blinded? I said, no. I said, you have to do it to check growth. I said, I'm not holding the, the light there on them for hours. I said, they're in my hands for 30 seconds. I said, they're perfectly fine. This one over here, our day 17 egg, the egg actually goes down into the curve of my hand here. This is the air cell. And then you can see some veining, but from here up where it's very dark is actually all chick. So watch, you're gonna be able to see some little movement, not nearly as much movement and transparency as the day 10. So definitely takes some growth. Some people like to track the air cell because your air cell will get bigger as time goes on. I really don't, but it is a nice predictor of where they're actually going to pip, so you can actually look around that air cell line. It's just something I've never gotten into, but definitely you can see, okay, going from here to seeing a spine to taking up practically the entire egg before going on lockdown, there is growth happening. And when I do put these comparison pictures up for my students, they're always like, oh yeah, that's crazy. I remember when it was just that little dot. One thing I do, and I have parents, I have teachers, I have family members, I have my friends on Facebook. They love my live stream. So in my classroom, and you know, in the world of teaching, nothing's ever given to you. It's kind of beg, borrow, and steal. That's kind of what happens when it comes to live streaming. So this is my incubator. I always set up a little light above it to shine down in. This is my iPad propped up on what you see is my stool, a bucket of dissection frogs, and another box, and I have it propped up there so we could actually see them. They don't hatch during school time always. You can't predict it. It's Mother Nature. So the first year I ever did this was same year that the April the giraffe story was happening, and they kept watching the April camera. When's she gonna have this baby giraffe? And my kids said, can we set up a camera for the chicks? And I was like, that is the best idea you ever had. I said, absolutely. So I worked with our tech department. They got me a spare iPad and we got it all set up. And over the course of time, I've used these 3 different platforms. It's kind of like what has a free trial, what do I like, what works on our school's one-to-one with iPads. So what works with their iPad? Can I push the app out to them? Is it free? So it kind of varies between these ones. All of them are good. But I can't tell you, I think the first time I hatched over the course of like 3 days, because I kind of put it on like day 20, day 21, and day 22, because like I said, they don't always hatch perfectly on time. I had, I think, over 4,000 views because they shared it. I had parents telling me, oh, well, you know, so-and-so gave us the, you know, send us a link, or I had it on your Google Classroom and I shared it to this one. I had one of my aides in my classroom. She's like, I was watching it on my phone and my 3 kids were all watching it on their own iPads. But it was something that got them excited about school. These chicks were hatching at like 2 a.m. and I see their comments that they were leaving, because as the host, I'm like, go to bed. They're like, well, the chicks are hatching. We can't. I said, I'll record it and I'll show you in class. So that is nice. It is good for there. Some people, I always talked about it, and sometimes we set up a live stream over the weekends. I have an automatic egg turner. Obviously the eggs need to be turned. The hen turns them naturally. You either got to turn them by hand so they don't stick to one side, kind of like an old person laying in a hospital bed getting a bed sore. You got to keep turning them, otherwise they get stuck to the one side. So you can turn them by hand. I don't. I spent the extra money. I bought myself the automatic egg turner. I put it in there, and it also eliminates a lot of fluctuations in my temperature and humidity, not having to open that so often. So over the weekends, if you're building, turns the heat off, turns air conditioning off, whatever it may be, your incubator does sometimes have an impact from that, depending on how bad it is. So therefore, I always do like to kind of monitor if there's going to be a problem going on. If we're getting told about a snowstorm, I always do like kind of throwing that on there just in case, because if there's a big problem, then I can call the custodians and say, hey, go up to my room and do this. Your custodians are your best friends. If you didn't know that, they're right before my secretaries. I love my custodians 10 times. It allows more students to see during hatching, because if I can live stream it and I can put it to their devices, we're a one-to-one school. If I can put it on my smart board, if I can stream it to my TV, whatever it may be, more kids are going to see that. As you're going to see my next picture, when you get 4 middle schoolers around the incubator, it's crowded and I get nervous. So this allows more students to see, especially if you're doing where it's, you're talking about it in all your content areas. You had great co-curricular teachers who pulled different projects in. They're going to want to be interested in it. Live streaming is your way to go. You can take that real up close and personal view and make it for everybody. So, and also community outreach. As I said, I had that one time, the first time we ever did it, we had like 4,000 views over the course of like 72 hours. People were excited about it. And especially if you're asking them to sponsor you, if you're asking them to buy something for you, do the outreach. They love that kind of stuff. They want to be able to see what it's doing for them. So there's my kid. This is my brooder box. I have the best shop teacher in the world. He's now since retired, but he built me this beautiful box that allows my lamp to hang on it. It has a plastic bottom to it, so it's easy for sanitizing and disinfecting it. So there's that. Here's what you see. So here's my horrible, messy desk. You see 4 middle school kids crowded around that incubator, and it's full. Right? I was actually standing on the table behind them to take this picture, but they're excited about it. This kid and this kid are not even in my homeroom. This is 8 o'clock in the morning. They were so excited to see the chicks hatching. They came to there. You're going to have tons of visitors. I will tell you that now. Be ready for it. I always do put it right next to my desk just so I can kind of monitor, make sure it's not getting bumped. I've gone as far as putting caution tape up. So if you tell them, and even younger kids, you can't rock the eggs, you know, they're in the middle of hatching, they're very understanding of it. But this is just my setup and how it works, and just kind of my tips. Keep it close to your desk to prevent crowding, prevent bumping, all that good jazz. So if you are new to embryology, you've never done this in your classroom before, I would take everything from here forward and from here back to the start and get yourself a groundwork. I may have some people out there who've already done this before. All right, you're kind of looking, how can I add, how can I change? This is where you can pull some new stuff in. So all the extension activities I have that go with this kind of stuff, and the genetic components of it as well. So this is the first one. It's called Talk to Talk Animal Chart. This comes from my high school ag teacher, Mrs. Gretchen Digman, who I said to her, I said, hey, do you have that chart? She goes, absolutely. So I did this exact chart in vet science when I was in ag. Basic animal terminology. It covers gestation times, and we talk about younger, smaller times versus longer times. You can easily, this comes in an Excel format in the stuff that you get today or tomorrow, and you can easily delete a column, you can delete a row, whatever you need to make it as basic or complicated as you want. The full one, we're talking high school, easily modified, go down some grade levels or some maturity levels. Because I can tell you that if you leave, you know, dog on there, you're going to say, oh, the kids are going to go wild. And when you talk about a female being called a bitch, they're going to go wild. I mean, I know some high school kids would still go wild over that. You can take it into a basic one, and you could make this into a learning center activity. I have everything written on note cards, and I have a chart. I take a big Sharpie and I mark up my whiteboard, and then we do go tape where yours goes. And we do that a few times. You could easily take that and make it, you know, if you're talking your elementary kids, you could take your chicken one. Okay, which is the scientific name? What is the male called? What is the female called? What's the gestation time? And do these basic cards with them. So there are many ways to go with that as well. Bird videos. I do show the eyewitness bird video. It's just something that we do when I talk about our vertebrate groups. We always do the bird one, but I just save that to one of the last ones while we're hatching so they can see all the different adaptations and behaviors that go with it. Bill Nye also has one. that they talk about all the different things of vertebrate groups. Discussion points, we talk about adaptations. They have an egg tooth, which is sometimes called a diamond tooth, which allows them to get out of their egg. They need something sharp or strong to puncture. Animal behaviors, we talk about imprinting. One of the biggest ones are like geese and ducks and turkey, sometimes chicks. They will follow the first thing they see because they are imprinted to believe that the first thing they see is their mother. So we can talk about those kinds of things as well. But these are definitely your upper elementary, middle school levels there. It might be a slightly boring for a high school level unless they're immature and you'd need to scale it down for them. Breed yes.
I'm just going to jump in. We have about 5 minutes left.
Okay.
Do you want to share your chicks with everyone?
Do.
And then we can come back if people can stay.
Sorry, I had to find one. So, as I was telling you, we did hatch our chicks. Alrighty, just so I could be able to show you some different features here. So, speaking of the egg tooth, I'm going to get her really, really close there. And you can see on the tip of their nose, beak there, right, is a little bit lighter, a little bit whiter in color. And that is their egg tooth. The one I picked up and I went and put down actually lost their egg tooth already because it was the first one that hatched. And they're typically gone within 24 hours. So there's a little bare spot on her belly, alrighty, because when you're talking about all the different features within the chick, they have some, they attach to the yolk and they attach to their allantois sac, which is essentially their poop and colon, rest of it. That attaches to there. So they actually have a naked spot. And I always tell the kids, it's like your belly button. I said, it's where you were connected as a mammal. As we continue on, for anyone who stays, depending on the breed, there are some different traits that you can see if sex-linked traits. So I'm going to fan out her little wings there. Alrighty. And if you actually see, there's some long ones and there's some short ones. Oh, you're fine. Okay. There's some long ones and there's some short ones there. If this is a sex-linked trait for the breed she was, and these were kind of mutt chickens because I got them from a farm who said, yeah, they're fertile, but they just sell them more for eggs. That would be a link to possibly being able to tell if it's a male or female if we knew the breed. She's like, I can tell you the breed of the hen. She goes, I can't tell you what breed the rooster was. So that is a fast versus slow feathering on them as well. So that is one thing I always like to go around and show my kids. I like to show them the egg tooth before it falls off. I like to show them their quote unquote belly button. And then I'll just say like all the little features that you can pick up on them. They don't have ears that stick out like us. Instead, there we go. You can see the little hole right there in the side of her head, which allows them to hear. That goes straight into their auditory canal. So those are some features that are nice to point out. And they're not, she's getting away on us. They're not always able to be seen after a few days. And yes, chickens can crossbreed. It's no different than mating a Labrador with a, I don't know, a Shih Tzu. Some breeds more than others, but for the most part, yes, they can crossbreed just the same way. Like I said, you can have two different dogs go across. Chickens can as well. Cassidy, were there any other questions that I had missed while we were talking?
We had a question about recommending a candler. Someone else said recommended a certain candler that they think works good. That's in the Q&A. And then you had also mentioned a flashlight. So
This is my little free flashlight from Harbor Freight or Bass Pro or somewhere. Like I know I got them at Harbor Freight because then if they go missing in my desk, I don't really mind it. This is by far the best thing. Did actually buy a real candler. I just didn't like it. I really just like my LED flashlight, and it has never steered me wrong. What do I do with them after? Well, there's a few different things. Typically, they go to my cousins. They have a blueberry farm, and because they are known for eating small insects, ticks, everything like that, and she has 4 boys, she's more than happy to have all the hens running around. So therefore, she takes them with no problem. If there's roosters, they just use them for food. Like I said, she has 4 boys. She loves extra food at her house. But so typically they go there. If I have some kids, if I know that they live outside of town, I teach in a city, but we have some kids on the outskirts and their parents say something to me, I give them to them. These ones are going back to the person who gave me the fertile eggs. I said, I'll just hatch them. I said, use them for my presentation. She goes, okay, I'll take them back and just put them back in with the rest. So that's where they're going. Were there any others there, Cassidy?
I think that looks about, we have another one. Would you have a coop at school to gather eggs?
Do I have a coop at school?
Yeah.
No, I do not. I get fertilized eggs either from local farms that I know have fertile eggs, such as my friend. I have a few different hookups. Like I said, I live in the middle of nowhere, kind of. You're going to know somebody who has a chicken coop somewhere. And then after about a week, I take them out and I give them to my cousin, back to whoever I got the eggs from, or who was ever taking them at that point. I do not keep a coop. I'm on the 3rd floor of a building with no windows. So, and we're in, like I said, I'm in the city of Pottsville. Coops would be a little bit dangerous.
Okay, so just so everyone knows, if it is after 3, if people have to leave, you can. Please take the post-test. But also, Trish has a little more to share if you are interested. So you can keep going, Trish.
All righty. Let me figure out how to go back again. I can't go back to share screen again. All right. Am I good again?
Yes.
Okay. So the breed research activity, I have them make an advertisement poster. I give them different breeds. I make sure to include one that we are currently hatching if I know what we are hatching. And that is part of our persuasive ones. They kind of have to not necessarily debate their breed, but they have to persuade one of my neighboring teachers to buy their breed. It's kind of whoever I catch. Sometimes I even get the principal, hey, come on up and let them do their persuasions for you. We always talk about, the social studies connection of why this is the best bird to be domesticated. We can talk about egg versus meat versus dual purpose. So sometimes if I bring in my neighboring social studies teacher, I say, all right, he's looking for a dual purpose breed, and therefore then they kind of step up and try and do their best to advertise their breed to him. Egg processing. So if we're talking farm store the plates, there are, you can do your career exploration activities. In the state of Pennsylvania, we do have career standards, career readiness. And therefore, this is one way I kind of pulled this in. You can pull in guest speakers about the production of it. And then just a simple video that goes through the production made by Nebraska State and how the eggs get from the farm to the supermarket. I stop it at different points to kind of discuss those different jobs and the things that go on with it. I'm also lucky enough that my dad works in egg production. So he's actually a truck driver. So I always kind of tell him to get me some pictures once in a while, and I show them some that go with it. Your label reading that can go with that. That's an extension for health class. Family consumer science as well. Darwin and Evolution. So the activity that I'm going to show you can be found right here. We always talk about homologous structures, which are the structures that are very the same in different species. And I adapted this to be a two-part activity. First, they do their sort, and then secondly, they write a descriptive text of why they chose the order they did. So I took this paper that you're gonna find, I laminated it, and I took all the little pieces and I cut them, and I give them to them in a bag, and they have to sort, okay? Beginning development, mid development, end development stages. And then, okay, well, I thought this one was, the fish they'll pull out right away. They'll say, okay, I see the eye. The chick, they'll pull out right away, they'll see the eye. But when they get to the pig, the calf, and the human, my kid says I'm too loud. When you get to these last ones, because they're all mammals, they're also going to see those individual traits and how they are a lot more similar than these over here. And then the actual activity asks them to write a summary, and we use that as a descriptive text activity. Persuasive writing, body. So we do my STEM kids typically do the breed. However, body systems, which organ is most important? I typically say, okay, you need to pick between brain, heart, and lungs. However, you can still offer, okay, out of all the organs, which is the most important? My gifted students, sometimes I say, okay, I understand brain, heart, and lungs are 1, 2, and 3, but what's 4? It's interesting. Or I give them 3 random ones. Okay, maybe we're talking biology, maybe we're talking anatomy. Here are these 3 random ones. Which one would you be the most important out of those 3? Not only that, but it confirms the knowledge of each organ's function. It's a good way to review that. We do a chicken versus egg debate. I turn it into a class debate. We kind of divide the sides of the room. Are you a chicken person? Or are you an egg person? And then we get into evolutionary reasoning, depending on the age, depending on what setting you're in. Are you going to discuss evolution? Are you not going to discuss evolution? The summary activity I do every year is I say, hey, there's this teacher. They're trying to, determine whether or not they want to do this in their classroom. Give me a yes, give me a no, and support it. And then we do an argumentative writing rubric. I pull up my picture of Bo here, and his mom teaches with me. Bo had no interest in the chicks. He'd look in the box and, yep. Well, when I put one in front of him and he got to hold it, he was protector of the chick, and it was a completely different kid. I said, I didn't even think you cared doing this. He goes, I just wanted to hold it. So there are kids you're going to reach on different levels. Being able to touch and hold is definitely going to be a perk. Conclusion, okay, just a basic from our hypothesis sheet to our results sheets. Here's our genetics component of it. So as mammals, our female has XX, male has XY, you get a 50-50 shot. Birds, on the other hand, are opposite. Male carries all what they identify as Z, and females, their eggs are Z and W. Still giving you your 50-50 shot when you put it into your Punnett square. However, it's interesting to know that the female is what determines the gender. The sex-linked trait I was showing you with the chick's feathers before must be carried on a gene and passed on to the offspring. The example I always show is fast versus slow feathering. The male has all even ones in this case. Female has opposite ones. However, that's only if you know the mother and the father, and if it's a sex-linked trait in that breed, and preferably a purebred breed as well. So you cross it in your beautiful Punnett square here, and males are ZZ, females ZW. Obviously, the W cannot carry it. It's only a trait carried on the Z. And so females will never have it. They have the fast one. Males have the opportunity to be that slow one because they carry that dominant trait of slow feathering. Autosex chicks are actually the really coolest ones of them all, because if you want them for laying purposes, you want to know which ones are your female, which ones are your male. So they determine autosex chicks. Means when they are born, they look completely different, male, female. This female here is very dark, okay? Has the dark bars to it, very light here. Male has this yellowish spot on its head, and it's a lighter in color. So once the feather's dried, you can do this. These are cream leg bars, and therefore that is actually a breed that was developed and spearheaded by Dr. Punnett himself, when the creator of your Punnett square. So my bio peeps, you know what it's talking about. If you have that dominant capital B, okay, it's going to be the broad white bars, as you see here on the side with the head. The females are going to be the barred ones with the more narrow white bars, real thin stripes here. So that's what's determined to be autosex chicks. Non-Mendelian traits, we have codominance, okay? If I have a black chicken and a white chicken, you get an ermine or a speckled chicken. Codominance means you see both of those traits. Incomplete dominance, once again, to my science, my bio peeps, if you cross a black with a splash, you kind of get a middle ground, and that's your gray, incomplete dominance. Neither one of them are dominant enough to take over, so you get that middle ground. I always tell my kids, if you cross black with white and you get gray, that middle ground, you cross black with white and you get speckled, those are two different ones there, codominance and your incomplete dominance. So genetic disorders and complications. So inbreeding, siblings actually can mate with each other. It's odd for us to think of, but they can mate with each other. However, problems will present over the course of generations. Typically, the first thing to go is the fertility, because over time, they just won't have the fertility. Nothing will ever hatch. It kind of takes care of itself. I always say there can be always a miscarriage. And then when the chicks are done, being I'm a science teacher, we crack them open. We say, okay, well, they have this, but they don't have this. This is present, but this isn't present. And we try to determine what day it stopped developing on. And if it stopped developing on a certain day, we can go back to our humidity, our temperature charts. Did something happen one of those days that would have stopped it? If we'd already candled them and we noticed that something was wrong with the shell, we could probably determine a cause of death because of what was wrong with the shell. Darwin's survival of the fittest. Chicks are the bullies of the whole animal setup. If something is different with one, they will eliminate it. They are the biggest bullies in the world. They will go after each other constantly to kind of weed out the weak, so there's more resources for them. Darwin's complete survival of the fittest. And then we also have our nature versus nurture debate on our hatch conditions. So this little guy I had pictured off here to the side has these really wonky toes. Now, it's hard to determine, is that, a genetic disorder, that something went wrong within its chromosomes? A lot of times, though, feet problem can relate back to humidity problems as well, and growing hatch conditions, I always call them. But we can always go back. I mean, if all of them came out that way, maybe we could. If, we had our humidity was hard to control, maybe we could attribute it back to that. If it's 1 out of 24 eggs, we can probably link it back to actually being a genetic concern. There's some different resources I listed to you. I love this last one here. They did a mini series on genetics, and it definitely is for your higher level kids. Read through it, present to them. They show you different Punnett squares and the crosses that comes back to them. Chemistry. They pulled in some chemistry of eggs. So if we're talking different sciences, typically not your life sciences, not your biologies, you can pull that in there as well. So it's just some different things for you to pull from. If you're looking for different extension activities, if you're looking to add something new, if you want to take this, but you're afraid, I'm afraid embryology is too young. My kids are older. They're going to love it. It's just a matter of what you're going to teach them through that. So any other questions?
It doesn't look like any others popped up. Give a couple seconds if anything
That's fine.
shows up. All right, looks like we got a lot of thank yous. It was great. Chicks love the chicks, so very nice. Oh, okay, we have one. What types of species have you hatched?
I've only done chicks and quails. I have lots of times kids ask me, can we do ducks? And I said, if I can get myself a pen built where they would actually have some water access, I wouldn't mind doing ducks as well. Just as a comparison, there is a girl, like I said, a girl at a neighboring school district she sets her 2 incubators at the same time. Chicks, ducks, they compare, contrast. So there is that. Do you need a permit to raise quail? I didn't raise them. I hatched them. I didn't need a permit to get them. I'm in Pennsylvania. I assume that you might be as well. I didn't raise them. They got taken to a game farm. They took them from me just because that's who provided me with the eggs. They knew it was for school. So I would have to look locally into your area as in regards to the permit question. Who supplied my eggs? I don't know their name off the top of my head. I can go searching for it as well. It's on my Facebook page. I can tell you that much right now, but I do not, connect to me and I will help you get some eggs if that's what you're looking for.
We can send out information with our list of resources as well if you do get a hold of that name then.
Good.
There's also, one other one that came through. Is there a particular breed of chickens that you found have a higher fertility hatch rate?
Not really. It depends where they're coming from. And that's the honest question. When I get them, the first time I did this, I had a really great hatch rate. Some people say that using your styrofoam incubators over time, they degrade and people buy new ones after so many times. I use my incubator once, maybe twice a year. So I don't ever really worry about that so much. But I get them from everywhere. It's kind of like who has chicks available or who has fertile eggs for me at that point when I'm actually ready to hatch. So that's kind of one. Rhode Island Reds are nice, but like I said, we're teachers. It's kind of beg, borrow, and steal. So I said one day I'm on like PA Poultry Board, and I said, hey, I need fertile eggs to put in the incubator on this day. So I have a hatch date of this day. What do you got for me? And then people are like, I have this, I have that. And then my former neighbor was like, come up and get them. She goes, I have them for free. So I went and grabbed them for free. But I do like Rhode Island Reds. They were nice. And it's kind of also who's going to take them. And I kind of always ask them what they want. But it varies in that capacity as well.
I think that might be, oh, here's another one. Have you gotten eggs from Tractor Supply? Oh, are they a good source to use?
I don't know that Tractor Supply does eggs. I think they always do day old hatches. Um, but I've never used them, so I could not speak on their terms. Yes, there are hatcheries that ship. The only problem I've had with shipping is that they would say to give them a day of rest so their aerosol gets back to the correct place. Other than that, yes, if you're looking for something in particular, go for it. Go get your whatever breed you want, especially when to keep them. I don't keep them. I give them to, like I said, I give them to my cousin who has a farm. She loves them just for tick and bug control in their blueberry patch. So she takes anything that's going to eat bugs and therefore is any chicken.
I think that might be about it, unless anything else comes through. But thank you so much for sharing everything with us today. That was very helpful information. We will be sending out a link to a bunch of resources, everything that Trish mentioned, her PowerPoint, all those other worksheets and links that she put together. So you all will be getting that tomorrow.
Yeah, and I mean, we can add, Cassie, we can actually attach my email as well. Someone thinks of something, someone wants to do this. I'm an open book. I self-taught myself. So therefore, if I learned it, I'm passing it on to you. I didn't do this. Don't have a college degree in it. I wasn't raised in it. I taught myself everything. So therefore, I'll do my best to share my knowledge and what I've learned with everyone as well. And then, like I said, if we go back to school, it might be 6 months until you tackle this. You know, maybe you forgot something. I no problem answering your emails in 6 months from now either.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Trish. Thank you.
All
And
right.
thank you everyone else who attended. If you could all do the post-session survey and post-test, that would be awesome. And we hope to see you at a future session.
All right.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Thank you.